Next, from Chicago, we talk with lobbyist Dick Lockhart about the constitutional amendment that will be on the November ballot. If approved by voters, the amendment would make a series of changes, including requiring a supermajority to increase future pension benefits. We'll hear why Mr. Lockhart said the amendment is too vague and would remove safeguards to pension recipients. This runs about 15 minutes.
Dick Lockhart, you're a lobbyist with the State University's Annuitants Association and also representing the Retired Teachers Association, and we thank you for joining us again on the Illinois channel. We wanted to cover, I think a lot of people are unaware, first of all, that there's a constitutional amendment that voters will be looking at on the November ballot, and that aside, there's been very little coverage of what it would do. It would be the 49th Amendment to the Constitution, and
now that's not quite true. It's identified as 49 as the number that was assigned to it when it was passed out of the House of Representatives. Okay. So
let's just start. What would the amendment that voters will be facing on the November ballot do?
Well, let me start off by giving that the public should be aware. This is from the Secretary of State's office, describes the amendment, provides arguments pro and con, shows what the ballot would look like. Now there's some things obviously that are talked about in the pamphlet and some things that are not. The two organizations that Mr. Martin referred to are both in opposition to this particular constitutional amendment. It's the only one that's on the ballot on November 6th. Basically, it's a very long and complicated amendment, but basically what it does several things, as a matter of fact. And one is that it requires, it's a mandate actually on all local forms of government. And when I say local forms, I mean every city, every county, every township, every school district, every special district, whether it's a fire protection district or public health district, all would have to comply with this requirement that's set forth in this particular amendment. Now the crux, there are several cruxes to it, shall we say, but the first one anyway is the requirement that any pension benefit that would be pursued or allowed under the laws of those special districts would have to pass the governing body of that organization by a 3/5 vote. Now, some people may think that that's going to make it more difficult to pass. Now, the League of Women Voters have examined this particular aspect of the Constitution, the proposal, in that it requires, like I say, a 3/5 vote for any kind of a pension benefit for any of the employees. And what the League of Women Voters conclude, and I agree with their observation about this, is that that requirement actually will give the minority, it takes away the majority vote, which is traditional with all forms of government in our country and in this state, and really would allow a minority to control the decision making, or absentees as it may be. So we believe that decisions like pensions, like any other issue, should be determined by a majority vote of the governing body. Now there's a question, what is a governing body? That is not described in the amendment. So we're a little uncertain about what the governing body might be. For example, what is the governing body of a state university? Now there are trustees for them, but the trustees don't really have any funding authority. Is, in fact, the governing body for the state universities the General Assembly, the Illinois General Assembly. It should be pointed out the House and Senate both have committees on higher education, and the House even has a committee on higher education appropriations. So we're uncertain as to whether the consequence if this became the law of the state, that any kind of pension change by any member of the state university systems would have to be processed through the Illinois General Assembly. We can't quite imagine how that would be done under the circumstances, but that's just one of the questions that's going to be, would be raised, and goes to the issues, what is the governing body. That's not defined in this constitutional amendment. There are a lot of definitions. If you look at the Illinois compiled statutes, and I looked at the index of that just the other day, and there's over 20 different kinds of definitions of what a governing body is in the laws of the state of Illinois. That's one of the aspects which I think was also going to generate an enormous amount of litigation. These are unknown areas that we're wandering in. The constitutional amendment proposal includes, for example, certain terms that have not been in the statutes or in the Constitution heretofore, something called, for example, emolument benefit, beneficial determination, how those would be applied to circumstances related to pensions in all of the various 7,000 special districts in the state of Illinois remains to be seen, except we can easily predict it will just clog up the judicial system even more so than is currently the situation.
So one of the major problems is that just we're not sure what it would do because the terminology hasn't been defined.
And because of that, there will be enormous numbers of cases introduced on all the various taxing districts and issues that will be coming up. This is going to, we think, this is the burden of the concern of the State Universities Annuitants Association, is it will make it difficult to attract and retain quality people at the state universities level. If they have to know that if they want to get any kind of a pension increase, it has to be approved by a 3/5 vote. I don't know whether that's the 3/5 vote of the House and Senate or the Board of Trustees or what, but it would be another complication, another deterrent, shall we say, for quality people. And that would also apply, for example, to cities who might need some kind of a specialized person to do some technological kind of services for the city, and whether we've been able to get that kind of personnel is a big question. The issues that are going to be related to that, or we think also over time will have an adverse effect on the economic growth of the state of Illinois and the cities and counties within it. The things that attract businesses to expand in anywhere is that the excellence of the educational system. That is certainly in question, both at the university level, which I mentioned, but also there's the 860, I think, school districts in the state of Illinois. They all have their own local teachers board, and the concerns that go with that is, under the circumstances, is Illinois and the school districts throughout the state going to be able to make an attractive enough offer that will provide us the best qualified people that would be available?
Let me, just because time's short, ask a question. You know, one of the things, as you know, Speaker Madigan wants to engage in cost shifting the future cost of pensions to the local school districts. Yeah. One of the fears by many in the Republican Party in the aisle would say that that has the potential of exploding the cost to local homeowners. Mm-hmm. And when that point is raised, they often would say, well, that is unlikely to happen because this amendment, were it to be passed, would make it more difficult to raise the pensions at the local level. You'd have to have the 3/5 vote. And we have seen egregious examples where people have gamed the system and raised manipulated the system for their own benefits. Right. Yeah. So to that end, doesn't the taxpayer need some kind of a protection to make it more difficult so people don't game the pension system?
I'm not sure that it would work that way, though. This does nothing for the underfunding of the pension systems. As to how this will work at the local level, we cannot say for sure.
Wouldn't it make it more difficult?
Might make it more difficult, yes, but it also would mean that it would not be a majority decision making. So whether this would cause a lot of problems at the local level, Like I say, remains to be seen. Is this a bad precedent that would be setting that decisions would have to be made by a 3/5 vote? That might mean that no decisions would be made at all, and the judges will end up by making the decisions. So we're into, I think the Republican assertion about the property tax increase is correct, but this, I don't believe that this proposal to amend the Constitution will have any effect on that situation.
Before we close out, one of the questions, as you well know, of changing the pension formulas going forward for existing state workers is the question of whether it would pass constitutional muster. If this was a constitutional amendment, if this were passed in November, does this have any impact on the legality of changing pension benefits for those current state workers?
Very good observation, Terry. There is a provision, and a mysterious cryptic provision is put in this proposed amendment that we interpreted, and also the professor of constitutional law at John Marshall Law School confirms, that would allow, if this was passed and by the electorate, it would give the General Assembly the constitutional authority to make any kind of change they were able to do. So there would be no longer any constitutional protection that's now found in Article 13, Section 5 of the Illinois Constitution. It would not be repealed, but this would be a way that the legislature could obviate its intention.
Do we know who authored this amendment, or who was backing it in the legislature?
Well, of course, the chief sponsor is the Speaker of the House, Michael Madigan, who is a serious legislator, and so we take this constitutional amendment very seriously. As you may recall, Speaker Madigan was a delegate at the Constitutional Convention in 1970, and I know he takes seriously the issues relating to state government, but I think this approach is not going to do it. That's our personal approach. A lot of people don't realize, for example, that the employees that I'm talking about, the teachers, the university people, the Retired Teachers Association, they do not get Social Security. So they live basically on this pension. And so they are very concerned that although they've paid into the pension fund for their whole working life, that somehow or other they will become the victims, even though they're the ones who have complied with the law. It's the state who has not complied with the law. They've used their pension money to do other things.
And briefly, we have local fire and police. They have had, with this word passed, impact their pensions?
Back to every public employee, firemen, policemen, teachers, librarians, veterans, workers from the veterans' homes, everybody.
So I just want to make that clear.
Yes, good point.
It's not just
good point.
affecting state workers.
Good point. The other thing I just want to close with, this amendment costs the taxpayers of the state $70 million. It's a cost to the state and to local governments. Now that means that any errors in here would have to be corrected not by a law, but by another constitutional amendment, and probably by another $70 million. So this is an opportunity to do something about an expensive kind of venture that the legislature has gone off on, and we don't think this solves problems. It creates problems.
Have you had any opportunity to speak directly to Speaker Madigan about his motivation?
I testified in the committee hearing in the House against it, and he sat there, and he and his staff person testified in favor of it. So he knows my position. He knows the position of my client. So I don't think it's already passed and it's on the ballot. So it's a done deal. We have to now urge as many people as we can to vote no on this constitutional amendment.
All right, well, Dick Lockhart, we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.